Hello, this is Scott Anderson with eduLaunchpad.com, and this is College Finances 101. This is our foundational webinar to explaining the fundamentals of the college financial system. This is where everyone should start to get a better handle on what they need to know to minimize their costs for college, maximize their opportunities for financial help, and keep them and their students out of debt as much as possible. Now, our agenda for this presentation is first we'll talk a little bit about who is eduLaunchpad. We're also going to be talking about the college funding environment, what you're going to be getting into. How do they determine if you are eligible and what monies you are eligible for? I don't think any conversation about college funding is complete without talking about the financial aid process. And then we're going to talk about the college financial track record, a very little understood aspect of the college financial process, but incredibly important. We'll also look at what you can do to minimize your costs for college and then close up the presentation at the end. Let's talk a little bit about who is eduLaunchpad. As we like to describe eduLaunchpad, we are the next generation of college search and prep. Our system helps you navigate through the college financial jungle that is out there. Our goal is to help students maximize their eligibility for funding, minimize their costs for college, identify those colleges which are most likely to give them the most amount of money, keep themselves out of debt, and provide a sound application strategy. We have been covered in numerous media outlets around the country, the Wall Street Journal, the Miami Herald, the Los Angeles Times, just to name a few. Let's look at the college funding environment. Why is college so ridiculously expensive these days? Well, there's a number of reasons, including less aid from government sources. We know that the state governments and the federal government are having a very hard time coming up with money right now. Well, when the states have a hard time coming up for money, education is going to take a hit. And when education takes a hit, the colleges are going to have to come find that money from somebody else, and that means they're going to come find that money from you. Teacher salaries are going up. Everybody assumes as they progress in their career that they should have some kind of an increase in their salaries. Cost of maintenance, upkeep, repairs, new infrastructure. If there is one thing that every college campus has in common is that they're constantly building something. Changes in technology. This is definitely a good thing. You want to make certain that your student is learning on the latest technology available. Consumers are demanding more. It used to be that one bathroom for every dorm floor was fine. Now we want one bathroom for every other dorm room. It used to be that Pete, Joe, Bob, and Bill riding around on the golf carts 5 days a week was just fine for campus security. Now we need 24/7 campus police forces. And also, there's the unfortunate situation that more dollars are chasing limited supply. In the government's eagerness to help students minimize their costs for college, they have poured more and more money into the financial aid process. This has had an unintended consequence of, through just the simple laws of economics, driving up the cost of college itself and producing the exact negative result that Washington was hoping. All of these factors are driving up the cost of education by about 4 to 5% every year. And it's going to be expensive no matter where you go to college. And you take a look at this graph. On the left-hand side, $42,224 represents the average cost of attendance of a private college in this country today. $21,447 represents the average cost of attendance of an in-state public college today. Now, cost of attendance is not just tuition, and it's not just tuition, room, and board. It includes books, room and board, living expenses, travel expenses. What they're trying to do is come up with a holistic number that represents a student's one-year experience at that school. Now, 4 years can cost as much as $50,000 to $200,000 or even more. And you multiply these numbers by the number of kids that you're sending to college, and these numbers get staggering very quickly. And how are you told that you're going to pay for it? Well, the first place you're told you're going to pay for it is out of your savings. But the problem is that the average American family, by the time that their first child is ready to go to college, has only saved $10,000 to send all of their children to college. And as we've just seen, $10,000 is not going to pay for 1 year at a typical state university. Borrow? Borrow has got us to the point where student loan debt is now the largest consumer debt problem in America. Student loan debt is now over $1 trillion in this country. Borrowing is not going to solve this problem. Scholarships? Well, would it surprise you to find out that all those scholarships that you hear about out there, the scholarships from the Gates Foundation or from your local Rotary or your local church or from a community foundation, those scholarships you go fill out all these applications for only make up about 2.5% of all the money that's available to help send kids to college these days. You're not going to be paying for your kid's college education on 2.5% of the money. Go to a lesser school is by far the most common solution to this problem. You keep working your way down through the list until you arrive at what you think a sticker price is that everybody can agree upon. Well, I'll tell you, you don't have to choose a college that way, and that really is a terrible way to choose a college. And finally, not go at all. The number one reason we love our jobs at eduLaunchpad is because we get to show families this is not a legitimate answer to this problem. If there is a will to go to college, there is a way to go to college. Now, there are 4 places where you really have an opportunity for saving money on college. Number 1, lowering your expected family contribution. EFC is the baseline financial calculation that is utilized by pretty much every college across the country. And because of this baseline calculation going into determining how much money is available, if you can lower that calculation, you can save a lot of money on college. Identify and apply to colleges with the most generous financial track records. Not all schools treat the financial process the same, and if you can identify those colleges which have a history of being more generous to students than others, you're going to save a lot of money. Position your student for the best possible opportunities. Student positioning is a critical aspect of a sound college selection strategy. And we're going to show you how you can best position your student for the best opportunities for the monies that are available out there. And finally, know how to negotiate. You know, when you receive an offer from a college, it is not necessarily written in stone. And if you know how to negotiate with the colleges and universities, there again is a great place where you have an opportunity for saving money on college. I want to tackle some financial aid myths right here up front because these myths are costing families tens of thousands of dollars every year. And the number one myth out there that always comes to mind is people think, well, I make too much money, so I'm not going to apply for any of the financial aid process. I'm not going to go fill out the FAFSA form. That's not true. You know, just because you make more than $50,000 a year or more than $100,000 a year or more than $200,000 a year doesn't mean that you shouldn't go fill out the forms, because there's a lot of money that is available out there that the schools still want those forms for, but it has nothing to do with your income. So no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you make, always, always, always fill out the FAFSA forms. Grades are too low. People assume that they have a C student, so there's not going to be any money available to them. Not true. You can have an average A student, average B student, average C student, and in some cases, even an average D student, and there can still be monies available to help that student go through college. Own a home. It used to be if you owned a home or had equity in a home, you weren't going to receive any kind of help. That's not true anymore. In fact, the equity in your primary residence now has absolutely nothing to do with most of the money that's available out there. Taxes have to be done. You look at all these forms and you figure there's no way I can possibly get these forms done without having my taxes completed. Don't fall for that, because there are critical dates out there which typically come well before when your taxes are due that you do not want to miss. These forms are designed to be done with estimates. So gather up the information as quickly as possible and get these forms done as early in the year as possible. Aid is only for special groups. Everybody's heard of some kind of program where to qualify for it. You have to have red hair, you have to be left-handed, you have to bowl and be from Bosnia. Well, if there are those kinds of programs out there, they fall into that little 2% of the money that we were talking about previously. It's an easy process. Well, unfortunately, it's not. It is a devil in the details process, and you need to become thoroughly familiar with this process, and we're going to cover as much information as we can here in this presentation to get you a head start on everyone else. Now, there's about $152 billion of help available to send your kids to college these days, and about 41% of it's made up of the federal loan programs. Employer-paid tuition programs make up about 5%. Private sources, which are those scholarships that we had mentioned earlier, make up about 2.5% to 3%. Federal grants make up 13%, the state's 8%, tuition tax credits 9%, and the VA 3%. But the college resources up here at 18%, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about those numbers because those are often the resources which dictate what you're ultimately going to wind up paying for college. So how do they determine if you are eligible or if your student is eligible for different types of money? Well, first of all, there are 5 different factors that colleges will often look at to see what kind of monies the student or your student is going to be eligible for. Number 1 is need, number 2, performance, 3, uniqueness, 4, school needs, and 5, positioning. So let's take a look at each one of these. What is need? The overarching calculation that determines need-based funds in the college financial system is COA minus EFC equals FN. COA stands for cost of attendance. We already talked about this. Tuition, room and board, books, fees, transportation costs. EFC is expected family contribution. This is a financial calculation which is determined after you fill out the FAFSA form. It is based upon your family income, assets, demographics. When you take the EFC away from the cost of attendance, you're going to come up with a number called family need. And that family need is what you are looking for help with from either the government or from the college. Now, performance is divided into 3 primary aspects. College prep GPA is the first aspect. College prep GPA includes grade point average within college preparatory classes, math, sciences, and English. Now, the second factor is standardized test scores, ACT and SAT scores. Very few colleges have a preference of one test over the other any longer. So typically, the most common solution is pick whichever test that your high school is utilizing. Then the colleges look at overall grade point average, and that is the grade point average of all classes that your student has taken over the time that they have been in school. What is uniqueness? Well, schools will often pay for diversity. Now, that diversity can be made up of different types of aspects. Geographic diversity. Perhaps a college in Chicago gets 80% of its applicants from the Chicago area. Well, a student applies from Florida. That student will often have preferential treatment for the monies that are available because the college wants to bring more students in from outside of the Chicago area to build geographic diversity within its student body. Ethnic diversity is probably one of the areas that people most often think about when they think about diversity. Schools often want to have an ethnically diverse student body. They want to have African Americans represented. They want to have Caucasians represented. They want to have Asians represented. The more students that they can pull in from different cultures to make their student body more diverse ethnically, the more money they will often devote to those students, which can add to that. First-generation students will often receive a bonus from colleges for different sources of money. What about school needs? Well, schools will sometimes look for specific students to fill specific needs that they have for those years. Perhaps the school is starting a new program of study that needs to be filled quickly to make it worth their while. Well, they'll often devote more money to the students that would apply for that particular program. Sports is often the area that most people think about when they think about school need programs. They're looking for football players, basketball players, baseball players, gymnasts, whatever happens to be the need in those programs for that year. Musical talent is another area that students will often get a lot of attention, and that doesn't mean that the student necessarily has to be a music student. If they play an instrument and can take the time out to play in the school orchestra, the school band, they can often get monies for musical instruments that are in need by the directors. Alumni ties is another area where students will sometimes be able to get additional monies, and some schools will have particular programs with designated fund recipients that only select students can qualify for. What about positioning? Positioning is the student's rank compared to other incoming freshmen. It is closely linked to performance, and you need to keep in mind that the students are going to rank very differently at the different schools that they apply to. The same student can apply to 5 different colleges and come in at 5 totally different places within that incoming freshman class. Now, positioning is a critical aspect of a sound college selection strategy, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's look into the financial aid process. Where do you get the money within the financial aid process? Well, it's broken up into 4 primary areas. Number 1, the federal programs. The number 2, the state programs. 3, collegiate programs. And 4, the external scholarships. Let's look at the federal programs. Pell Grants, Supplemental Education Opportunity Grants, are grants which are designed primarily for lower income students. Stafford loans and Perkins loans are loan programs which are available to pretty much every student that applies to a college, except in the case of Perkins loans, which are not necessarily offered at every school. The difference between subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loans is subsidized Stafford loans are no interest, no payments while the student is in college, but unsubsidized Stafford loans are no payments while the student is in college, but interest accumulates. Now, Perkins loans, where available, perform very similar to subsidized Stafford loans. PLUS loans are parent loan for undergraduate students, and these are loans which are often offered to the parents of students. I'm not really crazy about PLUS loans. First of all, I don't really think they're a legitimate aspect of a solid student offer because these are to the parents and not to the student. And often you can get better deals on loan terms from the secondary education loan market than you can out of the PLUS loans. Now, work study is a program that's available to many more students than what the grant programs like Pell and CEOG are. Work study are jobs on campus or very near campus, which are paid for through federal funds, and they are designed with students in mind. When you go to fill out your FAFSA form, you will see a couple questions on there. One question is going to say, do you want to take advantage of the loan programs? Always check yes to this answer. The second one is going to be, do you want to take advantage of work study programs? Always check yes to this answer. You can go back later after you have been offered a financial offer from the colleges and indicate whether you want to accept those funds if you are awarded them. But don't ignore those opportunities when you first fill out the FAFSA. You want to give yourself flexibility on the back end. Some families are concerned about having their brand new freshman student take on a part-time job. Is the student really going to be capable of managing a part-time job while they are getting adjusted to college life? Well, the University of Illinois a couple of years ago did a study to find out what does the typical new freshman spend their time doing at college. And they came up with these results. Out of a 168-hour, 7-day week, the new freshman students typically spent 35 hours a week sleeping, 15 hours a week in class, 13 hours a week studying, 5 hours in school studies, 5 hours in school activities, 2 hours of dependent care, 4 hours community, and 12 hours socializing. That left those students 82 hours a week to get their laundry done, to make certain that they got breakfast, lunch, and dinner, to play on the Xbox, to watch movies, or for a 10 to 15 hour work-study job. I highly encourage you, do not pass up work study if at all possible. Now, the state programs will often have special programs for in-state resident students, and what this means is that once you cross a state border, most of these programs are going to disappear. So don't think if you have a student whose home is in Florida that they're going to qualify for Texas programs. These programs are often going to target specific professions or specific ethnic minorities. There's also the collegiate programs, and particularly the private colleges have a great deal invested in these programs because private colleges have endowment funds outside of the government funds. They have fundraising groups, development departments, that their job is to get out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, beat the alumni bushes, and to rake as much money into that college or university as possible. Now, often, this is going to mean that those private colleges have more money to go around per student than what the public colleges do. And this is the big reason why you can often send a student to a private college for less money or about the same amount of money per year as what you would send them to a public college. Now, these schools are often going to give preferential treatment to the students in the top 25% of the incoming freshman class. So when you position your student with those colleges, you can anticipate that if you have an average student going into those schools, expect average awards. If you have a below average student, expect below average awards. And if you have an above average student, expect above average awards. External scholarships. Are private scholarship services worth it? If you haven't been approached by a private scholarship service yet, I wouldn't be surprised if you will be in the near future. A private scholarship service basically says, give us your student, we're going to make them look like the hottest thing since sliced bread, put them in front of all these different scholarship search committees, and we're just going to rake in the dough and it's only going to cost you $5,000. Are they worth it? In my opinion, absolutely not. First of all, you have to keep in mind that, as I mentioned before, these external scholarships only make up about 2% of the money that's available to help send kids to college these days. Now, how much of your time do you want to spend chasing after the crumbs? And here's a dirty little secret about external scholarships out there. Most of the time, it's a wash. The reason being is that the standard scholarship policy of pretty much every college across the country is they will discount whatever they would have otherwise given you in their financial package by the same amount of money that you receive in external scholarships. So if you have an $18,000 package from, say, Notre Dame University and get $8,000 in external scholarships, well, Notre Dame is going to knock $8,000 out of their package, put your $8,000 back in there, and turn around and say, congratulations, there's $18,000. In many cases, you gain nothing. So be very, very careful about how much time that you actually want to spend chasing external scholarships, because you want to spend more of your time figuring out how to maximize the 97 to 98% of the money that we're talking about here, rather than just the 2 to 3% money that is out there in those scholarships. Warning. All of these different sources of money that we have been describing here are on a first-come, first-served basis. And that means once those monies are gone, they're gone. They are not a continually refilling bucket of money. And this is where the college financial priority deadlines become preeminent. College financial priority deadlines are the dates that the colleges have set where they will sit down and look at all of the financial files that they have for the students at those dates, gather up all the completed files, and then distribute the lion's share of the money to those students who have completed files in their office. If you do not have a completed file in their office when that financial aid priority deadline rolls around, you're going to be moved to the back of the line, and then you're going to be struggling for the crumbs after they've distributed most of the money. So you need to be aware of what are the financial aid priority deadlines of every college that your student is applying to, and you absolutely must get your financial paperwork done before those priority deadlines roll around. Now, does that mean that you're going to be shucks out of luck and not have an opportunity for any money after that? No, but it's going to be much more difficult. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. And this is the standardized financial information form which is administered by the Department of Education, and it is expected by pretty much every college across the country. Up to 90% of these forms which go in, particularly if you're doing a paper form, go in with some kind of incorrect information on it that costs people money. A Harvard study recently showed that it takes 10 times longer to complete the FAFSA than what the colleges and the high schools and the Department of Education have been advertising. It is the application for all federal student loans, Stafford and Perkins. So if somebody ever comes to you and says, have you filled out your Stafford or Perkins loan application? There is no Stafford or Perkins loan application. It is the FAFSA form. It is required by many colleges for any of the money that they have, regardless of whether or not it is need-based. It is the EFC standard utilized by all state colleges and about 80% of private colleges. And it's going to ask for about 120 different pieces of financial and other information. Now, we always recommend that you complete the FAFSA online. And the location for the FAFSA form is www.fafsa.ed.gov. If you complete the FAFSA online, it's going to cut down on a lot of those order entry errors which cost families so much money. Now, you're also going to need a PIN or a personal identification number for the FAFSA. And the student is going to need a PIN, and if that student is a dependent student, at least one of the parents is going to need a PIN as well. You can get those PINs at www.pin.ed.gov. The CSS profile is another financial form which is administered by the College Board, and many private schools are going to want this form as well. It's going to ask a lot more detailed information about your home equity, your retirement, your homes, your cars, and all income and assets. It is the EFC standard utilized by about 20% of the private colleges, and it can ask for over 300 pieces of different financial and other information. Whereas the FAFSA only asks for 1 year's worth of financial information, the CSS profile actually asks for 3 years' worth of financial information. You can complete the CSS profile at the College Board at this web address. Now, most colleges are going to have their own institutional forms. And those forms, when they fill out, you're going to have to be consistent with the other two forms that we've already discussed, and usually they're going to ask very similar questions to the other two forms. These forms are going to vary across the board. Some colleges, when you go to fill out their institutional form, it's going to be one page and it's going to say, what's your name, what's your social security number, check here if you filled out the FAFSA form. That's a pretty simple form. Some colleges, when you get their financial information form completed, you will pretty much have redone the FAFSA form. Now, other colleges, by the time that you print out all of the forms that they are going to require you to complete, the stack can be as much as a ½ an inch high. So you need to be very careful about the information that is being sent to you from the colleges that your student applied to. So after your student has gone through the application process, any information that comes back from the colleges that your student has been accepted to, do not rely upon just their set of eyes going through those envelopes, because there will be very critical forms which are in those envelopes that need to be completed. So I always recommend that at least the student and one of the parents is going through all of the envelopes coming back from the colleges that the student has applied to. Particularly if your student has utilized the CSS financial application as well, there will often be business or farm supplements that need to be completed, and in some cases a divorce or separation form that needs to be completed. What information is going on the forms? Well, it's for the FAFSA base year. It starts in January of the student's junior year in high school and goes through December of the student's senior year in high school. For the profile, it starts 1 year earlier, in January of the student's sophomore year in high school, and goes through December of the student's junior year in high school. Let's take a look at the college financial track records, one of the most critical aspects of minimizing your costs for college. First thing you need to know up front, there is no one best school. I am no fan of the U.S. News best school list whatsoever. The idea that your student has to get into a specific college is a myth. There are best schools for your student, and very often those schools have a great deal to do with which schools are going to give your student the most amount of money. There are 3 things that you want to know about every college before you apply. You want to know what is the percentage of need met by that college. You want to know what is the percentage of gift aid met by that college. And you want to know what is the percentage of self-help. Now, to give you an example of the importance of these track records, here is a comparison of 2 colleges in Illinois, Lake Forest College and Western Illinois University. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at these numbers and tell that Lake Forest, at least on the surface, appears to cost over twice as much as Western Illinois. However, in this example, your expected family contribution is $10,000, meaning that your need at Lake Forest is $37,000 a year, and your need at Western is $10,000 a year. Now, Lake Forest has a very generous track record of meeting 100% of the student's family need. Western, on the other hand, not so generous at only 53% of the student's family need. Now, this means that at Lake Forest, you can expect to get approximately $37,000 to help you go to college there. Whereas at Western, don't expect much more than $5,000. meaning that your out-of-pocket cost at Lake Forest will typically be in the range of about $10,000 for these assumptions. However, your out-of-pocket cost at Western will be much higher at $14,700. This is a real-life example of how critical these college financial track records are to what you are ultimately going to pay for your kids' college education. At eduLaunchpad, we have made it very easy for you to immediately recognize which colleges are generous and which colleges are not. When you go through your initial college search, look for the college affordability ratings. One full dollar sign means that's a very generous college. And if you get down to where you have a completely empty dollar sign, that's a college where you're most likely not going to get much money out of them at all. Well, what can you do to minimize your college costs and maximize your opportunities for the dollars that are available? Well, everything starts out with a sound application strategy. A sound application strategy is absolutely essential to minimizing your students' costs for college. Sound application strategy starts with applying to at least 6, if not 10 colleges. One of those schools should always be a safety school. That's the college that you know that your student is going to be getting into no matter what. The community colleges are probably the most common safety schools across the country. Then you want to have 3 to 4 or even 5 or 6 match schools. Those are the schools where your student's going to have the best opportunities for coming in the top 25% or the top 50% of the incoming freshman class. Then you may want to have 1 or 2 or 3 stretch schools if desired. Stretch schools are those schools that you're really not certain that your student has the numbers or the performance to get into, but if they did, it would be a real accomplishment. And if you can take this combination of colleges and combine it with applying to colleges that have generous financial track records, you are going to be positioning yourself for the best possible offers coming back from those schools. You also want to know how to negotiate to get the best possible award. And there are 3 things that you need to be aware of before you look at any kind of negotiations. Number 1, you need to know your options. Your options are the financial track records of the colleges that you're considering. Number 2, you need to know your numbers. Your numbers are what's your expected family contribution and consequently, what does your family need at those particular colleges. And number 3, you never call it negotiating. Colleges do not negotiate. Colleges have an appeals process, and there's a very big difference between negotiating and an appeals process. Negotiating starts with an N. Appeal starts with an A. Okay, it's their lexicon. Use their language. Don't go calling up the college after you receive a financial offer from them and say, "Hey, can we negotiate this?" Because in all likelihood, you will insult them. You always want to use the word appeal. Can this be appealed? How do I go through the appeals process? Why would you ever want to file an appeal with a college? Well, frankly, first of all, colleges are run by people and people make mistakes. And if a mistake is made in preparing a financial award, you want to know how to identify that and what to do afterwards. Maybe the college got the Social Security numbers mixed up for students and prepared the wrong financial award for your student. It's happened. I've seen it happen. Maybe the college had your student listed as a off-campus student rather than an on-campus student. That happens quite a bit. Some schools will try to under-award. There is a process out there called financial aid leveraging. And financial aid leveraging is a statistical process where the schools try to determine what is the least amount of money that they need to give a student and still get that student in the doors of their school. Effectively, it is a very scientific process of how to lowball a student. That has nothing to do with what your student may or may not be deserving. And you always want to at least go back and ask and see if the school is trying to throw out there an award to see if you'll take the lowest common denominator. Some schools will try to compete with other schools, and this is where things can really get a lot of fun. We actually had a client one time where the young girl had applied to several different colleges, but 2 of them were Wartburg and Waldorf in Iowa, which were 2 colleges that at the time we weren't aware had a very competitive track record with one another. Wartburg calls her up one afternoon and says, "Hey, we're wondering if you've seen the award offer from Waldorf yet." She responded, no, we hadn't, but it showed up in the mail the next day. And that should tell you something. These colleges know one another. So we take Waldorf's offer and we fax it off to Wartburg. Wartburg looks at it and says, we can beat that by $500. And they send their offer back. Well, we're no dummies. So we take Wartburg's offer and we fax it off to Waldorf. And Waldorf looks at it and says, we can beat that by $500. We keep doing this about another 2 or 3 times, and ultimately we improved her financial award by about $2,500 a year. And then she decided to go to Drake. And I say that particularly because I want you to know that the point of this exercise is not that you pick whatever the lowest price is. The point is to put you in the position where you have the best possible offers to choose from. Maybe a parent has been recently unemployed, or last year's income doesn't reflect this year's income. Or you have a grandparent living with you that you partially support, or a student has a medical condition that prevents them from work study. There are all kinds of reasons that you could possibly work in an appeal for these colleges. Now in the premium section at eduLaunchpad.com, we have in there for your disposal all of the templates that we use for appeal letters. And I would highly encourage you, just go ahead and copy them if you want. But as much as you can, try and personalize them to your student. You can rearrange your affairs to get more money by learning the legally established rules. One thing that you need to know about improving your opportunities for more need-based aid. Assets in the child's name and assets in the parent's name are counted very differently. Different types of assets are counted at different rates. Some assets have a 0% penalty. However much money that you have in that type of an asset, it does not diminish the opportunity for financial help. Some assets have a 6% penalty. 6% penalty would be whatever you have in that asset. For every $100, $6 is added to your expected family contribution. 20% penalty, whatever you have in that asset, for every $100, $20 is added to your expected family contribution. Now, obviously, as you're increasing your expected family contribution, that's a bad thing. You want to keep that as low as possible. 6% penalty is typically going to be associated with the parent assets. 20% penalty is typically going to be associated with the student assets. Now let's look at how different types of assets compare. Good assets for college, or what we describe as sheltered assets, those assets which have no penalty associated with them. For the FAFSA, retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, annuities, equity in your primary residence, but that does not include vacation homes or rentals, cash value in life insurance, any equity in a family farm or a small business under 100 full-time employees, and collectibles. Collectibles include gold and silver coins and artwork. For the CSS profile, there's really only one sheltered asset, and that is cash value in life insurance. Bad assets for college. For the FAFSA, equity in other real estate, custodial accounts, UGMA and UTMA accounts. 529 plans, although they are treated much better than what they used to be, they will still have a negative impact on what you're going to be paying for college. Stocks, bonds, CDs, mutual funds, cash. For the CSS profile, annuities are included, equity in all real estate is included for the profile, 529 plans, stocks, bonds, CDs, mutual funds, cash, and custodial accounts. Then there is this class of assets which are kind of in between. For FAFSA, businesses receive various discounts, large businesses that is, not the small businesses, and limited liability partnerships. For the profile, retirement accounts, businesses, and family farms and LLPs. Now we go into, in the premium section, we go into much greater detail of how you can utilize various strategies to minimize these costs and maximize your asset structure. But you need to be very careful of the tax considerations when you're looking at manipulating any of these assets. And this is why I always recommend that you should become familiar with IRS Publication 970, Tax Benefits for Education. Don't be afraid of it. It actually is a very easy document to read. I know, believe it or not, the IRS actually wrote something that is user-friendly. Surprised me too. Now at eduLaunchpad, We have provided you a lot more information to help you navigate through this college financial process. On the free side of eduLaunchpad, we have our proprietary search engine that includes college track records and includes net price calculation in the search results, which allow you to actually see what colleges are likely going to cost you, rather than just looking at the sticker price, which we've already found out really means nothing. You also have access to all kinds of strategies and information that we provide to you there of how you can minimize those costs for college. Our career video section gives you a fabulous overview of several different careers to help students identify what they may be interested in. And one of the best sections on there are the college videos, where we have over 500 college video tours. Maybe your student is interested in a college clear across the country. You can go and look through the college tour video and get a very good idea of what that college is like before you ever set foot on campus. We also have the premium side of eduLaunchpad for those who want more tools, more resources, and more help. We have expert forums on there where you can go and ask your questions directly of the experts. Letters and templates, where I mentioned earlier, where we have all of our appeal letter templates that we utilize there for your usage. Webinars and the student development program, which is specifically designed to help your student get past "I don't know" and help that student work their way through a process where they can very confidently say, "This is what I want to do, here's where I want to go to college." And our worksheets and our checklist to help you navigate through the college selection and cost minimization process. And finally, direct access to us here at eduLaunchpad. This has been Scott Anderson with eduLaunchpad.com. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this presentation. You have a great day.